Hi, friends. You are listening to the EntreEd Talk podcast, where we feature amazing educators and entrepreneurs showcasing how you can bring entrepreneurship into the classroom. We believe entrepreneurship is for everyone. I am your host, Toy Hirschman, and I am so glad you chose to join me on this journey. Let's go.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of the EntreEd Talk podcast. I am your host, Toy Hirschman, the CEO and Executive Director of EntreEd, and I have my new friend, Emily Kilgore, with me today. This is going to be so exciting. Emily is a renowned educational leader with 17 years of experience in work-based learning, entrepreneurship education, and expertise-based learning. I'm excited to learn more about that. She is a CTE, career and technical education teacher, and the author and creator of the EntrepreNEW Pathways Curriculum. She is also the co-founder of Startup Tradeup, which offers best work-based learning and industry partnerships to the CTE classroom. Emily strongly believes that children cannot be what they cannot see, and has devoted her career to creating powerful connections with industry partners for the CTE classroom. Her mission is to equip the students with the skills they need to be successful in their future careers by providing them with practical, real-world experience. Emily was recognized by the Walt Disney Company as a top educator using innovation and creativity in the classroom. She earned her bachelor's in marketing from the University of Akron and holds a master's degree in CTE administration from Kent State University. She resides in Cuyahoga Falls with her 2 children and is committed to promoting work-based learning and entrepreneurship education nationwide. Emily, I am busting. This is so exciting. I can't wait to interview you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad we're new friends. This is such a great partnership. It's nice.
Yes.
It's nice to be here.
I'm so glad. We have had some fantastic conversations in the past month or so, and we talked about partnering and hopefully I get to grab hold of some of your subject matter expertise at some point in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. I love building new partnerships. So thank you for having me.
Y'all are going to love Emily. Get ready. So can you, I said a mouthful, but can you now tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that bio makes me sound really fancy.
You are really fancy.
Well, I am just happened along to all of this by accident. I was a graduate from the University of Akron. Back in the early 2000s, I had a degree in marketing and I started working for a company called Junior Achievement. For those of your listeners that don't know, Junior Achievement is a nonprofit organization that puts business programs into schools with a community volunteer from the business world that allows kids to work with an industry partner or a business partner to learn their curriculum. So I kind of started as an intern there. I worked my way up after college into working in development and program management. At that time, I worked with a lot of schools. And one of the schools that I worked with ran one of Junior Achievement's flagship programs. So we were always in contact. Over the course of several years, that teacher and I really began a good friendship and relationship through JA. And I didn't know this, but he was leaving his position to go to a different school district. So in the summer of 2006, I got a phone call from the HR director of the school district that I had worked with. And they said, would you be interested in being a marketing teacher in a career and technical education program? And I actually said to the person, like, they called me at the office. I was like, well, I think you have the wrong person. Like, there is somebody else here you must be needing to talk to, because I am not a teacher. And I knew nothing about teaching or career and technical education or any of this in that call. And she assured me she had the right person on the phone. And because I had a degree in industry with marketing and industry experience, that in career and technical education, which your listeners may remember as like what you may have had as vocational school or trade school, is now what we call career and tech ed, or CTE is what I'll refer to it as. That's how it's recognized now in education as CTE. So I didn't know any of this. And I was 25 at the time. I was young and single, and I had that mindset of, sure, I'll learn more about it. So I went on 7 job interviews in 1 week. I think I interviewed with everyone from the superintendent to the custodian. I don't even remember all the people I interviewed with, but at the end of that week, they offered me a job to become a high school CTE teacher, with the caveat that I would go back to school immediately and get my alternative teaching license in career and tech ed. So I said yes. I quit my job at Junior Achievement, and within 2 weeks, I was standing in a classroom as a high school teacher with absolutely no idea what I was doing. Like, just completely out of my league, Toy. Like, it was something. I remember the first day I walked into that classroom, and the principal had, like, shepherded me into the room and said, okay, here's your classroom, here's your keys. And on the desk, the teacher desk, was a 4-inch binder of these things called content standards that I had no idea what they were. So it was simultaneously the scariest thing and best thing I've ever done in my entire life, other than maybe having children of my own, because I didn't know what I was doing. Really, I look back and I'm like, they couldn't have given this job to anyone less qualified than me. But I've always had a very entrepreneurial family. And if you ever meet my family, we have always had this mindset of, like, you just fake it till you make it. You just do it until it becomes natural. Like, there's no backing down. So I did. I muddled myself through those first few months. I had an amazing collaborative teacher that, to this day, his name's Craig Orgowski. I will credit him a million times for helping me through that first year. But I learned. And what I did to teach, because I didn't know anything about teaching, assessment, I didn't have textbooks. And even if I did, I was never like the type of student to learn well in like a lecture or textbook kind of way. I was a hands-on learner, though I didn't know that at the time. I needed to be doing something to learn. So in school, I was just kind of like average. I got through it, but I never loved it. And my family, everyone in my family at the time was an entrepreneur. Everybody had their own business. And I had a lot of business connections with the partnerships I had built through Junior Achievement. So I just started teaching by letting kids run their own little companies. Awesome. We just would start little businesses. And I didn't know that at the time, that I was kind of onto something. So, that we just kind of muddled through trial and error. The kids would come up with ideas. We would run some basic like feasibility on them. We'd try some stuff, we'd fail a lot, and then they would succeed. And as I went through that job and got better and better, those businesses grew and grew and grew. There was, in my final years of teaching in that particular school, one of our student businesses was featured on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Like, I took what was really natural to me, which is working with business partners and entrepreneurship, and it accidentally became an amazing CTE program. So what really confounded me at that time, though, was administrators would come in, and this was 2006 to 2010. And it was this new era of testing and data, tracking students. And CTE, career and tech ed, at that time was in decline. We were pushing every kid to college, and we were testing the heck out of them, right? And they would come in and they'd say, okay, well, how do you assess this? How do you measure success? Where's your data? Where's your data? And at one point I had to say to these people, I was like, I am not a teacher. You hired me to come in here from an industry. I don't understand assessment. I'm not an assessment person, but look at what these kids can do. Look at this. Like, this class has run a company with $25,000 in profits, or look at what this kid has been able to accomplish, or, these real things were happening to my students that I couldn't understand why we were even trying to find data. Like, just look at their abilities. That's the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was when I would partner students that I had with somebody in an industry, they suddenly saw themselves differently. Mm-hmm. Because what I noticed is my high school students, always juniors and seniors, would be talking about the future, and people would be pressuring them and asking them that question, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to be after high school? Where are you going to go to college? And they would fall into this talk track that had been programmed into their head that they're going to be insert a career that they have had modeled for them, a teacher, a physical therapist, a veterinarian, a nurse, something their parents have done. And I'm not suggesting that those are negative decisions or even a bad way to make a decision. It's just that they were never exposed to opportunities that were out there that they didn't know about. And it got me thinking that I wasn't either. Like my whole, K-12 education, even through college, I never was exposed to real jobs, real people that had jobs in various industries that interested me. And I kind of just followed this blind path. Mm-hmm. And when I brought in meaningful partners that were there long-term, that were hands-on, boots on the ground with me to work with my students, their abilities and their opportunities they saw for themselves exploded in their minds. And so as I became better at teaching, like the assessment and formative evaluations and, the real things of teaching, as people like to say, I started to know that there were two things that I had to move forward with in my career. One is that children cannot be what they cannot see. If you do not put children in the path of real professionals in areas that interest them, they will never think it's possible. Second is kids learn by doing, and we need to have meaningful education around these skills that at the time were still being called 21st century skills, mm-hmm. which, by that point we were 10 years into the 21st century. Now we're 23 years into the 21st century and people are still calling them 21st century skills or employability skills. Or, I would often hear, well, students know so much about books, but they can't hold a conversation, they can't solve a problem, they can't work in a team. Those are the skills that I was seeing grow so clearly through what I was accidentally doing as a teacher, that it became the foundation of the work that I do. So fast forward a few years, I went to an adjacent school district and we started looking additionally at the future of work. What is work going to look like in this country 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 50 years from now? And this was shortly before the pandemic started. And we really saw that the future of work is changing and it is centered around entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is often seen as like venture capitalists and Shark Tank and things like that. But what is really happening in the workforce is that companies are moving away from full-time employees. And by the end of this decade, almost 50% of the workforce is expected to be considered what we call freelance or contract-based work. So even professional careers like nurses are often now contract labor. So everyone has to have some kind of fundamental training in entrepreneurship, in the entrepreneurial mindset, because we're all heading in that direction, especially our young people, and they naturally come to us with that ability. They've grown up with the devices in their hands. There's a much lower barrier of entry to any idea they have. There's so many tools and technologies now that a young, very young person can create something and sell it and take it to market really quickly with much lower risk than we've ever had before. And they know that. Like every student I ever interact with at some level, is an influencer or has been influenced by an influencer or, wants to drive for DoorDash to make extra money, or they always have these side hustles. Mm-hmm. And education in where I'm at, we were preparing them for employment, enlistment, or enrollment. So employment in a career right out of college, oftentimes using a CTE program, enlistment in the U.S. military at some extent, or enrollment in college, or some kind of higher level, post-secondary opportunity. But we were missing what I call the fourth E. We're missing entrepreneurship. It's the way that our future workforce is going, and we're not training kids on that mindset. So I work with a visionary superintendent that was like, you're right, we need to adapt the way that we're thinking. And we started a career and technical education program in Ohio centered solely around entrepreneurship. We were just going to do that in our local area. I work with students from 6 school districts now in a career and technical education compact, so I can serve the region in this capacity. But when we started that, a foundation, the Burton D. Morgan Foundation, who funds K-12 entrepreneurship education, found out what we were doing and then invested deeply in the creation of our program, which is called the EntrepreNEW Pathways. With the caveat that as long as they were creating it, the program that I created would then be available for other teachers to use nationwide for free. So it is, we wrapped that program up last year. In the summer of 2022, the EntrepreNEW program after 3 years was complete. And we created that using more than 100 partners in our regional area from the greater Cleveland area that are entrepreneurs or support organizations. And so it's been created in my vision of, first of all, children cannot be what they cannot see. So we have extreme exposure to entrepreneurs embedded in there. Every student has a mentor. There's a mentorship program. And then we took those skills, those soft skills, 21st century skills, the employability skills, and coined the phrase power skills. And those are the 15 skills that create an entrepreneurial mindset. And not only did we make the entire program surrounding that, but we created the first that we know of assessment related to those skills that teachers can now use for things like data and measuring growth. Though you'll never 100% get me to say that's the most important thing about that program. But we do have an assessment tool for teachers to use as well. And the program's free. They can take everything that we've created here locally, and I still currently use with my CTE program, and it's free for teachers to use. So they can, download the materials and they can incorporate any or all of it into their own classroom. So that program is created for high school programs and can be used in CTE as well. So when EntrepreNEW was made, when we were done with it, there just became this need for teachers to be trained on the program. Now teachers, so if your listeners are interested in it, they can use it without training. Nobody has to be trained. It's very thorough and complete. You can pick it up and start it. But I know, like, when I start something new, and many teachers start something new, it's nice to have some training and professional development around that. So I created a company of my own called Startup Tradeup, where I train and provide professional development services for EntrepreNEW and help that program continue to grow and build. But then what I've spun that off into recently has been in career and technical education. Students work oftentimes with industry partners in things like internships, apprenticeships, shadowing experiences. What's happened recently in the last year is that there's legislation that funds career and technical education that now has made work-based learning, which is where students are out in a work situation as part of their high school education, become a way we can measure success in career and tech ed. And that's so exciting to me because CTE has always had their finger on the pulse of the workforce, but now it's a way to say we can measure data on how a student, how often, how many hours, how they succeed in a work program. And that can be how we measure, one way we can measure success for a program. So over the course of my time that I've been teaching, I had developed an internship program, a shadowing program, a mentor program, and guest speaker series that I was like, why aren't we other people need access to this stuff. Like, this is now a big thing. A lot of school districts and CTE centers are wringing their hands trying to figure out, well, okay, if we can do this, how do we give it any structure? And also, what I've always noticed in working with my partners is it's incredibly time consuming. As a teacher myself, when I would be tasked with creating partnerships and, working with industry partnerships for my students or bringing people into my classroom, I was like reinventing the wheel every year, for every student in some cases. It's time consuming. And I would often, have a well-intentioned administrator or partner say, oh, here's someone who wants to work with you. Here you go. Like, it's a gift. Here's a partner for you. And the partner would come in and I would be like, okay, well, how can I make this person fit? Where do they fit? What should I do with them? And the students are uncomfortable in that situation. The partner's uncomfortable in the situation, and the teacher's overwhelmed by yet another person they don't know what to do with. And that's where relationships start falling apart, is if you don't have structure for the teacher, the business partner, and the student, the relationship will fail. And so I was, over the course of the last few years, had created all that. So when my partners come in, I say, here, you're part of the speaker series. Here's everything you need to do and say. Here's our internship program. Awesome. You don't have to create an internship program in your business. Here's our internship program. Just take our intern and they're going to work through this stuff with you. And we did that for all of our programs anyway that I was operating. So we've turned those into materials that career and tech ed centers can and schools can purchase and use for their own teachers in their own schools. And it's been fascinating because somehow we have stumbled on the missing link with career and tech ed, is that nobody understands that business partners and teachers need some structure. You need to give that to them. And once you do, the partnerships thrive. They come back every year. They're sustainable. The kids, the activities and projects that we have put in are hands-on and engaging based on what my experience has been with students. And it takes all the guesswork out of it for everyone. It's incredibly turnkey. So now Startup Tradeup is, we train and support EntrepreNEW teachers, professional development, and support that program's growth. But now we are also focusing on selling our E-Series programs to career centers, and even traditional high schools can use them, and then offering professional development and support services as those are rolled out as well. So I get the awesome opportunity to do both. I'm still teaching the EntrepreNEW Pathways program here in Northeast Ohio. Startup Tradeup has been birthed from my work. And then I have a staff that runs my company during the day so that I can continue to do both things. So yeah, so that's how I got here. And that's how I got to you in EntreEd, because our work certainly seems to overlap in so many ways.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. That is so awesome. I don't know how you have time, but yeah, but that's incredible. So I think, I know you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the filling that gap, because that's always an issue, right? Where you, as a teacher, you want to expose students to the real world and have those speakers and mentors and people come in. Like, you see that, and as a teacher, any teacher really knows that that's important. And then there are people on the other side in industry that really want to support the school system. But those two people don't know what to do. So the teacher's facing a mountain of challenges trying to get approval to get someone in the classroom. And then the business person's facing, like, I haven't been in a classroom in 20 years. And what if I don't know what to say? And standing in front of a room full of young people when you're not used to it is a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, you said two things there, Toy, that have been very, have come to light very clearly in the last 2 years that I've been working on Startup Tradeup. First is that I have so many meetings with industry partners. There's a trade organization that I work with in California that works in schools, has worked in schools for 2 decades, for 20 years. And they still struggle with, like, well, yeah, but we have these partners, we give them to the teachers so that they can work with their students. But it always just fails. It always falls apart depending on the teacher. Yeah, because no one gave the teacher any time or support or resources. That's where we need to focus, on giving the teachers the resources that they need to support do the big lift of having industry partners. And then once you have that, it actually makes teaching so much simpler, because you have those partnerships, they evolve, everybody's getting something from out of it, and you don't have to keep reinventing it every single year. So yeah, I work with a lot of industry partners. I was in a meeting last month with a city that their school district, they're trying to reach those kids that are not college bound and maybe don't understand the career opportunities that are out there because they're not in a CTE program. They're just kind of graduate and maybe drift a bit. So they were looking at creating this elaborate internship program. And so they called me and said, do you have anything that can help us? Yeah, we have a complete internship program. So all you have to do is connect the employers with the students, and we take care of the rest for you. Like, it's all built in for you at that point. And, those programs are built around the power skills. And so the kids come out of there with exposure to a career as well as the power skill education. And it allows them to more easily migrate into a job at that point. It helps everybody. It solves all the issues.
That is incredible, because that's really what we need.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to talk about the difference, because you said shadowing and internship. I think we understand guest speakers and we understand mentoring, but what's the difference? What's the difference between shadowing and shadowing and internship?
Well, our internship program is meant to be for a business that wants to employ a student, either as an intern or an apprentice. And there needs to be a connection to an educational component. But most companies don't have an internship program that they have structured. Now, some do. If you go into like a large company, they often have an internship program, but those are typically for college students. Who we work with are the ones that want high school students or postgraduate, post high school graduation students that they don't have a structured internship program. So what they want is employees. What the schools often want is the students to be able to link what they're learning to something that's happening in a classroom. So our internship program is 16 weeks, but you could stretch it out. It could be a semester. You could do it, over the course of a year, while your student is employed in an industry, they do a series of 16 projects with their teacher or, work-based learning coordinator or administrator or whatever, that happen while they're on the job site, or they observe things on the job site, or they work with their employer to better understand the industry, the job, the opportunities that are available. So they're hands-on projects the students do by being associated with the work that they're doing. So that's the internship. Now, shadowing, we know that not every student in every situation has the ability to work outside in a job or even needs that. Sometimes it's just as simple as we want to expose kids to careers or professionals. Like I did in my early days, I would bring people in to talk to my students. But I kind of left it up to them. Like, hey, can you come in and talk to my students? And then they would kind of get really nervous and shut down, and they didn't know what to say. So the shadowing program, what we do with that is it allows a student to go into a workplace with an individual, and it gives them all the structure. So show them this, talk to them about this. Students, here's questions you can ask. Here's a way to better explore what this opportunity could be for you while you're either there for a half or full day. So the shadowing experience is meant to be in and out and learn as much and get exposed to something in a very flash quick moment. The internships are meant to be a deeper dive into linking what you're doing in a job to what you're doing in a CTE classroom.
I love that. I love this. It's so amazing that you created this. It's exactly what I'm just thinking of all the teachers I know and myself, like that's exactly what I would want. Mm-hmm. If somebody gave me the green light and I said, do you want to start these programs in your, I would be like, oh yes, but What do I do? How do I find it? So this
Yeah.
is I'm so glad, because I knew that you were going to tell everybody super valuable information
Yeah.
today, but this is wonderful.
So just to be clear about the programs, the EntrepreNEW program is free. Any teacher listening to your podcast or any educator, if you go to the entreprenew.edu website, you can access the EntrepreNEW program today for free. You get everything. Okay. And it's a really robust, large program. That's due to the Burton Morgan Foundation funding. If you're interested in the work-based learning programs that we have, that would be the internship, mentor, shadowing program. Those are through Startup Tradeup, and you can go to startuptradeup.com and we can help you get, we can help work with you to find out which program you need and how that will work best. Those are not free. We charge for those. We are not a nonprofit organization. Startup Tradeup is a for-profit consulting business, but those are you can use Perkins funds to pay for those, which is the legislation that funds CTE. So those are available for sale. And then we have, like I said, professional development, training services, implementation services as well for school districts that are looking, to expand either entrepreneurship education or work-based learning.
Awesome. Awesome. And we will put all of those links and everything in the show notes, so you don't have to write them down while you're driving. That's not safe. But we'll put all of that in there so that you'll know where to find all of this awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So, Emily, talk a little bit about, as you were building EntrepreNEW and Startup Tradeup, talk a little bit about your challenges and how you built it, how you found these connections and started these industry conversations to get the programs both started.
Toy, that's a really interesting question, because when we started EntrepreNEW, I really focused on the small businesses in the greater Cleveland area, because Cleveland is pretty ripe with entrepreneurship growth. For those of your listeners that are not around here, an old Rust Belt city has been reinvented, really around like medicine, technology, and entertainment. It's a very robust culture here now that is incredibly supportive of small business growth. So I kind of made lists of, if I could work with anyone, who would it be? And we started reaching out to them. And over the course of 2019 and into the beginning of 2020, I had all these meetings, either in person or on the phone or, virtually once the pandemic started. And I sat with more than 100 partners, and these were entrepreneurs and support organizations that help entrepreneurial growth in this region. And one person, after I told them what our vision was, one person said no. One. Every single other person that I talked to was jumping to get involved. They were, yes, let me get involved. Now, we have lots of different ways for them to do that. I mean, we have very low commitment ways, and we have people who are, can do stuff with us every day if they wanted to. But one person said no. And it was so strange at that time, because I was having a bit of imposter syndrome, thinking that, who am I to have this, who am I to think that what I do should be out in the world, right? And as I sat with every single entrepreneur and partner, that imposter syndrome got so much worse, because they were all on board too. Everybody, yes. And then I felt this big pressure to deliver, right? Like, this better be good, because now all these people are involved in it too. So yeah, it's never been hard for me to find partners. And I know that any other educator, if they were to pick up EntrepreNEW or the E-Series programs that we have, your partners will say yes too, because everybody is swirling around this issue of labor and the changing workforce, and how do we get the right people into these jobs? Not to mention, career and tech ed is exploding again. So when I started teaching, it was on the decline. Well, now it's back, because students are on to the fact that college is very expensive. There's no guarantees. They aren't 100% sure of what they want to do. And not all jobs require that anymore, because as we have pulled back from CTE and trade education over the last, 2 decades, we are now feeling the impact of that. There's a shortage of plumbers, of electricians, of HVAC professionals, of people that can fly airplanes, of, these jobs that we have kind of put every kid into college to do, these professional jobs and research and science and math and technology. Those are great, but we as a country, we started to abandon trades. And now kids are coming back to them in droves. We have so many career and tech ed programs in this country that are thriving right now because they're well-paying careers. And kids, once they understand and know about them, they can have a really successful, comfortable life in a trade again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was in career tech ed too, as in part of my journey, and it was such an eye opener for me to see. And we would have some kids come back after they graduated, showing me their paychecks, which was awesome because they were higher than mine.
Yeah. Well, and CTE is often a path to entrepreneurship too. A lot of students will go into, they'll go through a masonry program. Well, then once they've done that, a next natural step is to create your own business. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in career and tech ed, which I've always liked, that dynamic of my work-based learning E-series programs and the partnership with EntreprenNEW Pathways. They just really, there's such a connection between entrepreneurship and CTE.
Yeah, it's and what's nice sometimes in CTE is that you have a lot of teachers who have had that experience too, and have come into the school after running their own, building trades company, running their own construction company, running their own welding company, and then they come back. And so without even having to make it explicit, sometimes those connections just organically happen in CTE.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful.
CTE is amazing. I love it. It's such a niche of education. A lot of people don't really know what it is. I mean, it's becoming more, if you know, if you're in it, you know, but a lot of people don't really understand it. And once they do, it's the golden spot of education. I love it. I love that. That's where I've got to spend my 17 years of teaching. And it's a wonderful path. But
yeah, I was always joked. I was a CT administrator for a little while, and we were standalone, which was kind of cool. So we had the high schools busing into us all day long, but I'd go to these meetings with other principals, and just, half of the conversation was discipline, this, and I'm like, I have nothing to share because nobody does anything. You give me the biggest, baddest kid that you have in your building, and I'll put a nail gun in his hand and he'll be fine.
And I think that is a nod to what I was talking about before, which is CTE gives kids two things. It gives them hands-on experiences doing something where they're not sitting and taking tests all day or all year, and it gives them connections and time with a teacher. I have my CTE students for 2 years. When they leave the program, we have built a great relationship amongst each other, the class, the partners in the industry. They have a sense of belonging in CTE that I think is absent in a lot of traditional education. And that can take any challenging kid and really kind of help right that ship a little bit. And it takes kids who aren't, in a challenging situation, and it helps them just continue to grow and thrive. CTE is where it's at.
I agree. That's awesome. I so enjoyed my time there because the teachers were amazing. The kids were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great, and you can do a whole lot. I mean, traditional classroom teachers are great, but you have a little more freedom to work your curriculum the way that it makes sense than you do in a traditional situation. But
for sure.
So so what's the dream, Emily? So what do you want? What would you hope to have happen with Startup Tradeup? Big dream.
I don't know. I waver on this because Startup Tradeup is growing fast, and I feel really passionately about helping other educators ease this burden and make their programs better and easier for them. That's my passion, is helping educators. But at the same time, I love coming into a classroom every day with high school students. There's something incredibly hopeful and magical that I find with juniors and seniors in high school, and that, they're young adults and they have so many ideas and they still think anything is possible. The world has not jaded them yet. Even the ones that have been through the worst situations, they still look forward to the future with hope. And so oftentimes, I have like full-time job in a business, a growing business, and I'm a single mom with 2 kids. So I'm often like, oh my gosh, like something has to give here. And I look at my 2 careers as, my teaching career and now my business, and it feels like my other 2 kids, like Sophie's choice here. I can't give one up. So I've been fortunate to work alongside a former student of mine. My first year teaching, I had a student in my program. Her name is Nadia Mullen. And she graduated my first marketing program that I was teaching in 2007. She went on to, go to college. She lived abroad and taught for a while. She came back to Cleveland and has been working in business and stuff like that. When we got the EntrepreNEW grant, I was able to hire a fellow. And so I hired her because we had kept in touch. She's amazing. So when I founded Startup Tradeup, her and I had worked so closely together with EntrepreNEW that I knew that her and I just had a groove. We worked together so well. So her and I co-founded Startup Tradeup together. So her full-time job, her world is to work in Startup Tradeup, which allows me to do both, at least for now. I don't know, at some point, maybe it will become something I do 100% full-time. I kind of hope that, but at the same time, I don't know how I'll ever walk away from CTE teaching either. But yeah. So I don't know. I'll report back on that one.
Yeah, there is something just so energizing and wonderful about being around kids. I love every opportunity I get to be in a classroom and around kids. And I'm guilty of finding ways to pop up student events whenever I can.
Yeah.
Well, look, we can make an event out of this. So I get to hang out with kids for a day.
Teaching is interesting because I always knew I had been a teacher a long time before I had children of my own. And I always knew that I had a really special spot in their world, because I knew when I talked, they listened for the most part. And I'm not saying they listen in class, like sometimes they don't do that. But when I offered my opinion about something, or they came to me to talk about something, they listened to what I had to say. And I didn't truly understand the special place until I had my own children that started school. And they come home and everything their teacher says and does is truth, is fact, is, the sun rises and sets on those teachers. And I started seeing my role completely differently, that I have someone else's child that is trusting me to impart wisdom on their life, to help to guide them. And I guess I always knew that, but now I see that's a treasure. That is a treat to spend that kind of time with another human being and have that role in their life. I always think teaching is like you play the long game, right? So you're having these moments with them when they're juniors and seniors in high school, and you don't know what's sinking in, but then you'll have a student come back, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later and say something like, because you said this, I did this, or because I had this experience in your program, I can now. And, you wait a long time to hear that, but you hear it, and it's a really special place to be with a high school kid.
That's so beautiful. And what a testament too, that you were able to hire one of your first.
Hire. And now she's my business partner, and thank God for her, because I am like, if you had her on this podcast, she is operations. She keeps the ship organized and moving and everything going. And I'm out there like, let's do this. Let's go here. We have to do this, So she is the yin to my yang, and I couldn't do everything that I've done wouldn't have been possible without her working to keep it all moving and together.
Awesome. So. Well, we should have her on too. We'll talk about that later. This is so great. It's funny. that I also interview entrepreneurs. Like, well, you're an entrepreneur too, but so I interview, you're both things, but I interview educators in entrepreneurship education and also entrepreneurs. And some of the entrepreneurs don't have a teaching background at all.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I don't know that there's been a single one that I've interviewed where they haven't, by name most of the time, called out a teacher from somewhere along the line. This teacher got me and straightened me out, and Mrs. Jones or whatever. Yeah. And this is why that propelled me into the my business and my entrepreneurial journey. So it's true. Teachers
are great.
Power.
I was last year, I was so fortunate in 2022. I was selected by the Walt Disney World Company as one of their top 50 teachers in using innovation and creativity in the classroom. And let me tell you, well, first of all, I don't know how I was selected, because there was some contest, somebody entered me into it. I have no idea who it is. Whoever did this has kept the world's longest secret, because I dying to know, but unknowingly somebody had entered me in. So last May, the week before Memorial Day, they brought all 50 of us to Disney World. And, it was very interesting for many reasons. But first, it was interesting to be surrounded by teachers that had like that mindset and energy. Because when you work in education, you don't get a lot of time to really network with other teachers. You can within your own school and sometimes your own school district or surrounding, but to be brought into that capacity with teachers that were really outside the box thinkers was really cool. Second, we had all this training that we went through with Disney and their Imagination Campus. And everybody that we talked to, from we met the CEO all the way to Imagineers to, architects, everybody who works in the Disney capacity, their leaders were there to train us. And they kept reiterating what I already had built, which was the importance of the power skills, that we can take any employee and teach them anything. But we cannot teach people to solve a problem. We cannot teach them to communicate clearly. We cannot teach them grit. We cannot teach them how to overcome your personal challenges. Like, we need you to do that. We need high school teachers to be doing that, middle school teachers, elementary school teachers to be doing that. So it was interesting to come back from that experience, having heard from one of the most innovative companies, that what we're doing here between Startup Tradeup programs and EntrepreNEW is exactly what they're looking for when it comes to the future of work. But in that event, we they asked us if we'd like to be in the parade in Main Street. So we're like, yeah, yes, please. We'd like to be in a parade. So they took us backstage to where the parades line up, and any of your listeners who's ever had a child that's been in like a band or something, we just did what they did, but they put us in front of like the characters. So we are walking in front of the whole Disney parade. And it was a really hot day in May, and there was, I don't know how many people are in the Magic Kingdom on any given day, tens of thousands of people, maybe 100,000 people. So there's thousands of people lighting this parade route that we walked. And people were crying and yelling, "We love teachers. We love teachers. Thank you, teachers." And I get goosebumps just still even thinking about the moment, because as I was walking through that, it was professionally one of the most beautiful moments I'd ever seen, because in this country, we have somehow decided that educators are like the enemy.
Yeah.
There's such a public cry out against educators and teachers. But in that moment, I didn't see a single person not smiling at a teacher, saying thank you, appreciation. And I was walking along thinking, after the last few years of being an educator in the pandemic, every teacher in America deserves that, to see that despite all of it, people love you and appreciate you. And there is, what you're doing matters, because every single one of them, I was not their teacher. I didn't know any of those people in that crowd, right? Even my own children were there, and I've never been their teacher. But just to have felt the outpouring of respect and love in that moment for teachers was something that I wish I could give to every teacher in America right now.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
That made me cry a little. I do that sometimes.
Me too. I wish I had a video of it. They're like, no videos. You can't take any videos,
Oh,
you can't take any pictures. So it just lives in my mind, my memory.
well, it's as much as it would be cool to have a picture, you were able to be completely there.
Truly. Yeah, it was great.
That's beautiful. Well, that is such a wonderful place to start to wrap up. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Before you go, why don't I know we kind of did this already, but let's just do it again. Tell everybody how they can find you, find your programs, reach out to you. What can they do if there's a teacher out there listening like, I want this stuff. What do I do next?
Yeah. Well, if you want this stuff, please reach out to me. You can always, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you just search Emily Kilgore-Knight on LinkedIn, you'll find me there, or Startup Tradeup, or EntrepreNEW. If you want to email me directly, you can email me at emily.kilgore, Kilgore, at startuptradeup.com. And anyone who reaches out, I can help you get to either the EntrepreNEW Pathways program, which that one's free. Anybody can have it. Or I can help you determine with our work-based learning CTE programs what might work for you. Or if you're an administrator or somebody looking for PD or keynote speaking or something, I can help you with that as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been an absolute joy. I'm so thankful and grateful you were here today. And
yeah, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yes, and we're
You
gonna
make me want to start the podcast I've been dreaming of for the last few years.
well, I know how to do that, so let me know.
Yeah, I just, if you could let me know how to build more time into my week, that would be helpful. Then I could start the podcast too.
That's if I could figure that out.
Yeah.
That's the answer to all the problems.
You would be magic if you figured that one out.
Awesome. Well, thank you
All
so
right.
much. And I can't wait to continue our conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.